Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm Lucia Sheehan. I am the Executive Director and the founder of Violence Free Living. We're in week 2 of a 5-week session. If you haven't looked at week 1, I would really suggest that you stop and look at week 1 first. Also, if you haven't taken the pre-test, we would really like for you to take the pre-test because there will also be a post-test at the end of the 5 weeks. And that's how we get more funding, more grants, more donations and stuff. So we really do appreciate it if you would fill those out for us. You can fill those out or find those at the website below. So last week we talked a little bit about what is abuse and the different types of abuse. We also learned last week that the main objective for this class is to understand your own behavior. You have to understand your own behavior. Nothing's going to change. Nobody's going to change for you. Until you look at your own behavior, nothing will change. And we also learned last week that violence is always about power and control, and no one can make you be angry or violent. It's a choice. You choose to be violent or angry. So this week we're going to talk about learned behaviors and how those behaviors affect our choices and kind of a through history type thing. We're going to start with contributing factors of abuse, and we're going to talk about all of these: evolution, hardwiring, feminism, family dynamics, social classes, religion, culture, and peer pressure. The one thing I want to point out very strongly at the very beginning here is that when we talk about some of these, we are not putting down or trying to put a negative on anybody's faith, laws, rules, religion, or parenting. Most parents only can do with what they have to work with. They do the best they can do with what they have to work with. And when we go through this history, I'm just trying to point out how things have changed over time, how different things have been brought down through the generations, and how those might affect how we choose today. So I just wanted to make that clear. We're not putting anybody down. We're just putting all this out there in a short history class. So the first thing we're going to talk about is evolution and hardwiring. We know for a fact that the male has dominant strength. They have always been the provider, the protector at the beginning of time. They've been the provider and the protector. They're more aggressive from birth. They're stronger. They have more testosterone, and they always have to keep up that strong image, that image of always ready to fight, show no emotions, be strong. They're never allowed to be anything else but strong. In our society, they're considered weak if they are not that way. Prior to 100 years ago, men killed animals with brute strength. He was the defender. He was the protector. He was the hunter. 100 years ago, our society was predominantly agricultural, and division was based on gender. Division was centered around the house. Everybody in the household had responsibilities, even the children. And if we didn't do what we were supposed to do, if we didn't take care of our responsibilities, then we may not survive. We may not survive a winter. We may not live through the spring, whatever it is. We all centered around the household, the responsibilities, the job. And at dinner, we came together, and there was a sense of accomplishment, a sense of unity, a sense of belonging. And I also want to point out, I can't teach this class without pointing out along this same time frame in the United States, slavery was in its throngs. It was very much alive. And so I also have to talk about the Black man's journey, because the men in our society are there to protect their role, which society sets strongly for men and strongly for women. The men's role was to protect their family, was to care for their family. And the Black man wasn't even allowed to do this. He wanted to protect his family. He wanted to take care of his family. But unfortunately, so often his family was ripped apart from him, and he had no idea even where they were sometimes. But yet he was forced to protect other people's families. So I can't even begin to imagine some of the effects that has on people through generation and generation and generation, and how that would even today filter into that through those stories and the emotion that went on with that. Our families have come through so many things. So many families have come through so many hard times and so many different things through generations. But the one thing we can cherish, we can love our families, our histories, our stories, and we can keep them in our heart, but they don't have to dictate who you're going to be. They don't have to define who you are today. They don't have to define how you live and how you're going to live in the future. We get to do that as an individual. We get to choose that. We get to choose what's healthy for us, not what's told how we should behave. After that, we're going to go into the feminism, and feminism is going to pick up kind of several different things here. The feminism and the first we had no rights. 1920, the woman won the right to vote. 1940, World War II broke out. What happened when World War II broke out? Industrial Revolution came right before that. Industrial Revolution was the first time men left the farms, left the fields, and came in more into the cities because they wanted a better paying job. They wanted to have more secure income coming in. So they went to the factories. Now, when we sit down for dinner, it's not so much shared on survival. We do still have dinners. We do still share things, but now we're sharing what each one of us is doing through the day, but it's being shared. Then World War II breaks out. When World War II breaks out, obviously the men had to go to war to protect us, to defend us. And for one of the first times in history, I don't want to say the first time, but one of the times in history, in masses, women came out of their roles. Women came out of their prescribed roles from society. They went into the factories and they took the place of these men in their jobs. And if you see in the upper left-hand corner here, you can do it. That's Rosie the Riveter. She was a huge icon during World War II. What she's representing is she's telling all the servicemen and women that we are here for them, that no matter what they need, we will make it. We will send you the ammunition. We'll send you the planes. We will make the tanks. We will make the guns. We'll make whatever you need, and we will send it to you because we're in this together. So we have your back, kind of, is what she's trying to say. So, and that was great because that's what they needed. So we again were working together as one unit. So when the war ended and the men came back from the war, they wanted their jobs back, justifiably so. They wanted their jobs back. And most of the women were more than happy to give them their jobs back. They wanted to go back to their role. They wanted to go back to what they were doing as the housewife, the homemaker, the mother, raising the children, taking care of everything on the home site. But there were several women, there were a lot of women actually, who said, oh, no, wait a minute. I'm not so sure. I like making my own money. I like having my own job. I like being out here on my own. I don't think you're going to get your job back. And I think that started some of the mass confusion that was going on, even today. Because now that started the fact that we don't have very strict defined roles. This is a man's role in our society and this is a female's role in our society. Now it's starting to intertwine and get a little blurred, especially for the males. With that comes the role, the male's role and protector for the family. It kind of gets diminished because now the female's stepping in and doing the same things that the male was supposed to do. So he's trying to find his place. He's trying to figure out what his role really is. And one of just a really small little example of that would be, let's say that you're a male or you're a female, either way you want to look at this scenario. A male sees a female trying to get into a door, so he opens the door for her. And a female looks at him and says, excuse me, I'm not weak. I can do it myself. Do you mind? Get out of my way. He's like, okay, sorry. So the next time he thinks, all right, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So the next time he doesn't open the door for the woman. And she jumps on him and says, excuse me, where were you raised? Are you not a gentleman? Could you not get the door for me? So that's just a small example of some of the confusion that goes on. The only thing I can say about that is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. What matters is that you stay true to your own beliefs. You stay true to your own morals. You know what's right or wrong for you. And like anything else in this class, you make healthy choices for you. Don't let someone else's ignorance, anger, or whatever they want, don't let their values change your values. You stay true to who you are, and you'll find your way. Both men and women need to be respected. Society needs to respect the roles of both male and female. And it's getting better. Since our society had the roles so strict for men and women, it used to be that if a man wanted to stay home and the woman wanted to go to work, he would be ridiculed because it was his place to take care of his family. It's still that way to some degree today, but not quite as bad as it used to be. And I think that's great because today, two people that are together, they're talking about that. And what works for them is what's healthy. As long as both male and female, both parties that are involved in the relationship agree on what they want to do, then that's what's healthy. It doesn't matter what anybody else says should be happening, what anybody else says has to happen, or judges you. It doesn't matter because they don't live your life. They're not in your family. They're not behind your doors. You have to do what's healthy for you. And I think it's great that a lot of people are doing this. A lot of people where you have both parties working. They're even taking turns with the children. They're understanding the significance of both parties and their careers and how important that is, and raising the children. One party might say, you know what, I was home with the kids the last time they were sick. Now it's your turn to stay home. And they're abiding by that. So it's working for them. And if it works for you, I think that it's great. I think that the roles should be respected by both men and women, whatever they are, whatever they choose is healthy for them. I think that we need to eliminate all these prejudged roles. And I think that it's great that even some of the organizations and companies today have come on board with that. They understand the significance of these changes that are going on. Because a lot of them today, if the woman gets pregnant and wants to go on maternity leave, the husband or the significant other gets to go on maternity leave too, because he also wants to be at home and wants to be part of that nurturing, part of that bonding with that child when they're first born. I think that's beautiful. I think that that's helping our society overcome some of these stereotypes. I think that it's great. I just think that we need to understand the importance of boys and men living more complete emotional lives rather than being told always to be into that controlled, cold image, because that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all. And I think that even sometimes from birth, we numb boys down. We numb the males down because you take a baby girl that cries. We're going to pick her up immediately and take care of her and care for her, nurture her, make sure she's okay. But so many times a young boy cries or a young infant child cries, male infant, and you might hear the dad or the males in the family say, leave him alone. Let him cry a little bit longer. No, just let him alone. Let him cry. He needs to grow up. He's going to be a man. He needs to be tough. He needs to know how to take it. So I think from birth we start numbing them down. I think from birth we start numbing boys down. And we have to teach them how to live a more fulfilled life. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the religion and cultural laws. And again, I want to point out we are not diminishing or criticizing any religion or law that's been on the books. But these are laws that have been on the books for many, many, many years, or have been on the books and no longer are on the books. We just want to know that that filters down through generation to generation to generation. Remember, whoever has touched your life, anybody that has ever touched your life has helped form who you are today. So the religion and cultural laws. The first laws of relating to marriage were implemented by the Romans. Women were obliged to conform to the demands of their husbands. If they didn't, Roman men could chastise, divorce, even kill their wives for not performing the way they thought they should. That was law. Medieval times, Christian church sanctioned the beating of women. Men could flog or beat their wives to maintain moral order at home. Our roots are through the English common law, the European culture. At the end of the 19th century, state laws gave husbands the right to beat their wives. I don't know if anybody's ever heard rule of thumb. And actually, rule of thumb, I've seen sites where they've said it is law, but I've also seen sites where it said that they thought it was just an accepted practice, a very detailed accepted practice, or very common accepted practice. So, but what that means is, in case you don't know what that means that a husband could beat his wife as long as he didn't beat her with anything bigger than his thumb. So as long as the stick wasn't as big as his thumb, or was his thumb or smaller, he could beat his wife. It wasn't until the 1970s, 1980s where the law started coming in for domestic violence in this country. In other countries, Islamic women must cover her face with a traditional veil. Orthodox Jewish, a wife can't get a divorce unless her husband says, I'll give you a divorce. No matter what's going on, she can't get a divorce unless he agrees. In India, women are still burned for not bringing in enough dowries. A dowry is something that the bride's parents give to the groom when they get married, and if the groom doesn't feel that they gave enough, he can burn his wife. In Afghanistan, when the Taliban, wasn't too long ago, the Taliban forbid women to work outside the home, attend school, or leave the house unless she was accompanied by a male. If she was caught outside the house on her own, she'd be locked in her home for a year and wasn't allowed to leave. So those were just some things that I wanted to share with you. There's many, many others, but the reason I did this was we just wanted to share with you and explain to you how some of these laws, some of these cultures, especially since today, with all the cultures blending together, that all these have been passed down through generations. And maybe some of this is how some people still see it. Maybe some of this is passed down as okay and they still use these. Certainly not everybody does. But remember what I said, no matter no matter who you are, whoever has touched your life, anybody that has touched your life has helped form who you are today. And if you're taught these things, then you're going to live them. If you're anything you taught, you're probably going to live, because that's what you're told is correct. That's what you're told is healthy. That's what you're told is right. So with that, we're going to go on to the family dynamics. Guilt and shame, judgment, positive, support. Were you raised in a family where no matter what you did, nothing was good enough? No matter what you did, you were shamed. You heard things all your life growing up saying, I can't believe you're going to do that. You're too stupid to do that. You tried 3 times. Why are you going to try again? You didn't succeed the first few times. I can't believe that you're wearing that outfit. It looks ridiculous. Why is your hair 3 colors? How dumb can you be? Or were you raised in a family where those same things, but in a different light? No matter what you did, it was positive. So you didn't get it the first 3 times. Try again. You're intelligent. One day you're going to figure it out. Just keep trying. Work a little harder. You're awesome. You're great. That outfit looks neat on you. It's a little different. Why'd you pick that out? Or even the colors of your hair. I like those colors of your hair. Purple, pink, and green. Why'd you choose those colors? That makes a big difference in how you view the world, how you see life, how you see yourself. If you have support, you're obviously going to look at life a whole lot different than if you have no support at all. Your self-esteem is going to be a whole lot different than if you have no support at all, no positive input. What about trust issues? Trust issues are major. And what if you're young? What if you're young, a young boy or young girl, and you have a friend and you're like, or you go to an older person and you say, I really have this problem and I don't know how to handle it. Can I share it with you? But you have to promise not to tell anybody. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody. Go ahead, share it. So they share it with you and you help them and they get through it. And then a few months later, you're with your friends and you decide to share it with your friends and they start making fun and teasing this child. What do you think those trust issues do for that child? They destroy it. It's going to be a long time before they trust somebody, and maybe never an adult again if it was an adult that they helped or they went to for help. What about parents? Abusive, non-abusive? What kind of family were you raised in? I'm going to ask you 2 questions right now, and I want you to take a few minutes to think about them. Were you raised in an abusive or non-abusive environment? The second question is, how do you know? How can you even define or answer that first one? Because no matter how you were raised, that's what you were told was correct. That's what you were told was healthy. That's what you were taught is the proper way to live. So it's really hard to answer that first question. I know I had a gentleman in one of my very first classes that in the prison that came up, and he was brave enough to say, you know what, I kind of get this because I grew up watching my mom get beat up all the time. And I swore I would never beat up, I would never hurt, I would never injure a woman or any female. And I'm in here because domestic violence. I beat up my girlfriend. He said, I cry, I beat myself up mentally because I do that because I know I don't want to and I don't understand. And of course, whenever somebody asks me what I think, I always say, I'm not a professional, I'm not a doctor. I would suggest counseling. I suggest counseling to a lot of people. He says, but let's just talk about it. He says, let me tell you what I thought. I said, all right, go ahead. He understood that even though he knew it was wrong, even though he thought it was wrong, or there was a piece of him that thought it was wrong, that was the way he was taught. That was what he was told. This is what it means to be a man. And he never questioned that. So it's almost like a instinct, a reaction. And he thought maybe that was it. But he did promise me he would start going to counseling. But I thought that was a really good example. That's what he was taught it was to be a man. You have to beat up on women. You have to act this way. So you think about it. How were you raised? I have many men in my class tell me how much they were abused, how much they were locked in closets all day long because their parents didn't want them, or they'd throw food in there for them, or how they were beat every day because that's just the way it was. And they thought everybody lived that way until they got out, until they got a little bit older and they started getting into school and getting into the church, and they could talk and they could, they found out everybody wasn't treated that way. But until you start comparing, you do think that's how everybody lives. What about core values? Your core values are set really deep. And they say that they get set in between around 11 years old, in that time frame. That's how you're told what you should believe, how you should live. So think about what was going on in your life when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, even 12. Very formative years. Think what was going on in your life. That core value is set pretty deep, but you can change it. It is changeable. You just have to be aware of your behavior, but it's very hard to do. But you can do it. I believe in you. I know you can if you want to. So from there, we're going to go on to peer pressure. What about peer pressure? There's all kinds of peer pressure in this country, all kinds of peer pressure. You have hazing. Hazing is, in case you don't know, hazing is something that you have to do. You have to mark off all these things that they tell you to do to join a sorority, fraternity, a club, a membership of some kind into something. That's hazing. A lot of schools, a lot of colleges have banned hazing because so many kids have been getting hurt, even killed. You know, you can't chug, a fifth of whiskey in so many minutes and then think you're going to live. You're going to have alcohol poisoning, probably. Gangs, they know exactly what they're doing. I want to point out just a little bit about gangs. Gangs are not stupid. The head of gangs are not stupid. You have two kids on a corner one night, and the one kid, and it's going to be really condensed, but you have one kid that says, you know what, I got to get home. I have curfew. If I don't get home, I'm going to be in big trouble. So he kind of starts going home. The other kid starts teasing him and going, oh my God, you're such a wuss. I can't believe it. I'm my own person. I can do whatever I want. I set my own time. I don't have to account for anything to anybody. I'm pretty cool. True. It would appear that way. But on some level, that child going home, that young kid going home, on some level, he knows, he might not like it, but he knows that he's loved. Somebody wants to know where he is. He's accountable. And they want to know he's safe. The child on the corner that's still on the corner, he knows on some level, nobody cares about him. Nobody wants to know if he's safe. Nobody's making him accountable for anything. That's exactly who the gang targets. That's exactly who the gang picks. You want a family to belong to? We have just the family for you. Come join us and we will be your family forever. But you just have to do this, this, and this. And teens will do anything to belong. Anything to belong. Gangs know exactly who to target. They target the people with low self-esteem and the weak. And they give them this spiel about how great their life is going to be because the teen wants to belong to something. What about talking, gossiping, ridicule? It's horrible. Why do we do that to one another? Why are we so quick to put somebody else down? Their styles, their fashions, the way they're dressed. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know what they're living with. Why do we feel we have the right that we're superior to them and we can make fun of other people? Our lives aren't perfect. You know, I always like the saying, if you can't say something nice about someone, then why say anything at all? You don't know what heartaches, what pains that they're going through. So why laugh at them? Bullying, joking, making fun of people. Internet bullying is horrible. Horrible. You know, I mean, it goes all across everywhere. And I think, personally, bullying is just another form of cutting. Bullying is just another form of cutting. A cutting is somebody who has so much pain, so much emotion, whatever that is, anger, hate, pain, confusion inside of them. They have to get it out. I was never a cutter, but I did beat up on my thighs a lot. I would always hit my thighs. My thighs were bruised a lot because the pain inside, to get that out, that hurting and cutting or hitting my thighs, that is a lot less than the pain that you're enduring within. So you have to get that out somehow. I personally think bullying is just a form of cutting. That's all I think. I look at bullies now. I have no tolerance for bullies, but I do look at bullies now and I think, when I see a bully and I think, oh my gosh, what have you endured that you have to treat others that way? What kind of pain have you buried in order to treat others that way? I feel very sorry for bullies. What about media, song, movies, TVs, the TV shows? They're horrible. All these video games with all these graphics in it, and you just allow children to sit there and play hour after hour after hour. That's not healthy for them. They can't distinguish between reality and fiction. You need to talk with them. You need to set limits. What about these adult cartoons? King of the Hill, Mr. Dad, I think, is another one. I can't think of all of them, but there's a lot of those adult cartoons that is for adults. And so many people I know, or so many people in my classes that said, oh yeah, I sit there and watch that with my kids. We laugh together. No, those are for adults, because when you look at it and you watch it and you laugh, you know that it's on an adult level. You know what they're doing and what they're saying is so ridiculous and that it's not true. That's why you're laughing. But your kids might look at that and say, oh wow, mom and dad think that's really cool, or that's really funny, so that must be real, or I think I will do that or mimic that. And kids do mimic what they see, and they don't see it on the same level that you see it. Those are for adults only. They're not for kids. But yet we expose them to them. I think they say that your brain doesn't fully develop till you're like 25 or 26 years old. So imagine what a small child's brain looks like. They can't absorb all that. As a parent, we have to teach them that. We have to guide them. So peer pressure can be horrible to get things done, and even as an adult, but it's really bad for teenagers. So from there, we're going to go to culture. All of this plays a part with who we are and how we react or interact with people. You have your language, you have your nationality, your ethnicity, your race, all those beautiful stories, all those beautiful ancestors, all those beautiful, the cultural, the traditions, all those are beautiful. And we want to maintain them and keep them in our heart and keep them in our homes. Those customs that we do, those are great, but they don't have to define who you are. You get to do that. You get to do that. What about social classes? It makes a difference. It makes a difference. Did you come from an educated family or a non-educated family? From the day you were born, did you know you were going to college? Or the day you were born, education wasn't even a big deal. Matter of fact, they didn't even care if you went to school or not. It makes a big difference. How about a single parent home or a two-parent home? Yeah, a single parent can certainly raise a child well. Very stable home. But to have both parents at home, it's just a little bit more input for that child. There's just a little bit of difference there. What about we raised in a wealthy family, poor, middle class neighborhood? Makes a big difference on how you see and how you view the world, how you interact with the world. All those things affect who we are today. Whoever has touched your life has helped form who you are today. Please remember that. Now we get to choose what we want to do with that. We get to start making our own conclusion and what's going to do. Okay, I'd like to share one of my stories with you right now. When I was going through so much of my therapy, I had one therapist when I walked in one day. She said, I want to do this exercise with you. And she said, I want you to sit in the chair. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to look within and mentally go within and go down to your soul and see what you see. I was very skeptical and I started kind of laughing. And she said, no, I'm serious. I'm serious. She said, close your eyes and tell me what you see. So I thought, all right, I'll play along. So I did. I closed my eyes and I looked within and opened my eyes. And she said, what'd you see? And I said, well, I just saw a little black dot. She said, okay, that's good. She said, now do it again, but this time take a deep breath, take more time, and go in and really look at that little black dot. If you have to, visualize yourself going over to it, but I want you to see what that black dot is. I said, all right. So I did. I closed my eyes. I really got into it. I envisioned myself going down into my soul. I saw that little black dot and I looked over at it. And I was shocked at what I saw when I walked over there, because it was me curled up in a ball. And when I walked over to Lucia, she tilted her head so gently and tears were streaming down her cheeks. And she looked at me and she said, where have you been? And I said, what do you mean, where have I been? She said, why did you abandon me so many years ago? I have been down here all by myself waiting for you. Where were you? So I walked over to her. I asked her if I could give her a hug, and she said yes. And I mentally gave her a hug, and I said, Lucia, I am so sorry. I will never abandon you again. And I learned that day, it dawned on me, no matter what anybody has done to me in my past, no matter what anybody could possibly do to me in my future, will never hurt me more than I've hurt myself by abandoning myself. That was the worst choice I've ever made in my life. And I did it without even thinking. Very painful. Once we connected, I check in periodically with Lucia to see if things are on track, and I'm so happy. But that was a very, very healing exercise for me. Thank you for letting me share my story. But one reason why I share this story at this time is because it feeds right into our writing assignment for this week. And the writing assignment for this week is I would like for you to write a letter to your inner child. What do you want to say to your inner child? And if you have the time, the place, I would invite you to please do that exercise. Close your eyes and go in and look at that inner child. Because so many of us abandon our inner child without even realizing it. Things happen to us in our life, we bury things in our life, and we don't even realize that we've abandoned that inner child. And that inner child needs to come out. And the hardest thing I found to do when you actually connect with that inner child is to forgive yourself for all the unhealthy choices that you've made. To forgive yourself. That's the main thing, to forgive yourself. But I invite you this week to write to write a letter to your inner child, see what they have to say, see what he or she has to say, and go from there. It's a beautiful therapeutic exercise to do. At this time, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share everything with you today, and also remind you to please fill out the pretest. The pretest and the post-test, which is going to be at the 5th week, are going to help us get future funding through grants and donations. You can do the pretest at www.violencefreeliving.org. Also, any questions that you might have, please feel free to send them to us. We will answer every question that we receive. And in the very near future, we will also use some of those questions because we are going to have a live question and answer period. So hopefully you'll be able to join that too. But for right now, I'm going to say thanks for joining us and have a great day.